I think all public sector workers want to say, first of all, thank you for taking the time after what had to have been an exhausting struggle to come up here and share your experiences with us. I know that despite the fact that we are facing very different contexts in some ways, that the lessons that you have to offer us and that you're going to share with us tonight are things that all of us can learn from. And so I want to begin just by saying thank you for taking the time to come up and speak to all of us tonight. In West Virginia, we all know, the labor movement right now is staring at the Janus versus AFME Supreme Court case. And that is threatening to impose essentially right-to-work conditions on the labor movement across the country. But what your strike showed was that that court case does not have to be a death sentence for the American labor movement. That actually it may be a wake-up call to the American labor movement to get its act together and start putting the rank and file first. And so I think all of us have a lot to learn from you, and I just want to take a few minutes to reflect on some of those lessons, because I know that we have people here who are visiting from a lot of locals around the Northeast, and we've all come to try to learn from your struggle. But a lot of these are cities where the prevailing conditions for teachers are very different. We face similar attacks. We face similar attacks on our health care, on pensions, on stagnant wages. Our working conditions get worse and worse. Although here, the unions look very different. They're large, they're institutional, they're totally tied in with the political sausage-making factory in the city, and they really do reach into the lives of workers in a way that I think is probably different. They're experts at tamping down the activity of the rank and file or redirecting it. And I think that what is so inspiring about the struggle in West Virginia, and that I would invite all of us to reflect on, is that you didn't just slam your head against the wall asking the union to do things for you, asking the union to be more active or to stand up for people. You didn't hit that brick wall over and over again. You just sort of vaulted over it and took the fight straight to the boss, straight to the legislature, and you made the union adapt to your organizing. And I think that that, to me, is a really important lesson, because while we all believe that rank and file is what makes the labor movement what it is, that's where the power lies, I think it's easy to lose sight of what that looks like when it's actually put into practice. And so I want to say thank you for reminding all of us what real rank and file action looks like and what's possible when workers actually take the struggle into their own hands. And I take your visit here as a challenge for us in some ways. I mean, a lot of us have been organizing in the wake of the Chicago teachers' strike. And they're the model that we saw work, which is one that I think has a lot to recommend it, is that you campaign to win union office, and then you're able to mobilize a workforce and a larger coalition of people within the city behind you. And that's an important lesson for us. But I think that West Virginia puts something else on the table, which is what happens when the rank and file just does it themselves? And I think that that also needs to be an important part of the conversation. How do we put the rank and file in the driver's seat? And so for me tonight, the challenge you present to me is how to think much more creatively and much more with much wider horizons about what's possible for the labor movement in this moment. And that we should not limit ourselves to just the project of struggling within our unions for a seat at the table, but that we should think really big about what's possible for public workers. And I think it's an interesting question. You know, how would our organizing look different if instead of campaigning for union office, we campaigned for a public sector strike in New York City? That would have sounded insane to me a month ago. And it sounds something that if it's not part of the conversation now, that we'd be missing out. And so I am inviting everyone here today to use your visit as an opportunity to raise our expectations, expand our horizons, and learn a little bit about how you were able to put the rank and file in the driver's seat in West Virginia, and how we can maybe think about spreading that model around the country and also bringing it here to New York. So thank you for taking the time. I know it's no doubt an exhausting journey, and it's been an exhausting struggle, but we all are in your debt, and we are all looking forward to learning from you tonight. So thank you very much for coming out.
Thanks, Kevin. We're going to have some welcome remarks from Judy Sheridan-Gonzalez, president of NYSNA. We're very lucky, as I said earlier, to have the space and to have her with us. So she's going to say a few words to welcome us.
Thank you. I'm going to be uncharacteristically brief, those of you who know me. So this is really exciting for us because about 6.5 years ago, we had a rank and file initiative, and we had this crazy idea that maybe we could, really make our union a union and take over our union. And where's Pat Kane? Can you please stand up? Pat Kane. Stand up, stand up, stand up. So all you need is a couple of crazy people who think that that's possible. Developing your caucuses and doing the work that you have to do, knowing that things are so bad that it could be better, and you're going to make something better. And we just recently came back from India. We were invited by the United Nurses Association of India. There's 5 million nurses in India. And you think right to work is bad. They don't even have the right for exclusive representation or collective bargaining. They have to do other things. What they have to do is they have to have strikes. They have sit-down strikes. They have hunger strikes. They do all kinds of things to get their needs met. And when I was coming back, I said, what's wrong with us here? And then I hear about what's going on in West Virginia, and I was like, wow, it really is possible. Maybe we can rebirth a better labor movement, a more militant labor movement, and a labor movement that can really fight for workers and communities together. Just like the old days, it doesn't matter what the laws say, right? What matters is that we have the power. So I welcome you to our home. We talked to Sean. Is Jill here yet? Jill? Not here yet. So we talked to Sean, and me and Jill were coming back. Jill is the executive director. We're coming back from Albany, a whole other kind of meeting. And, we said, oh, so what food do you have? He said, well, we don't have food. And we said, what do you mean you don't have, we're older, so it's our home, we have to have food. So Jill went to get some pizzas. So we're going to be having some pizzas and sodas a little later on for everybody, because we can't have you in our home without some kind of food. We're, mothers, grandmothers. So anyway, enjoy. We're really excited to have you all here. We're really excited to be here, and let's let the show begin.
Thank you. So a couple folks are going to come up and join me right now. This has been such an incredibly inspiring struggle. There have been an outpouring of solidarity greetings directed at the strikers. We're going to read a small sampling of them tonight. The full text of all of them will be available on the event webpage, on the Facebook page. So if you'd like to see the kind of international support that this has inspired, you can go indulge yourself in some of these comments coming from around the world. So the first two that we're going to have are from Puerto Rico and Mexico.
So this first statement is a statement of solidarity from the Federación de Maestros de Puerto Rico. To the victorious educators of West Virginia, the Federation of Teachers of Puerto Rico expresses its full solidarity with the teachers of West Virginia in their exemplary struggle to get a fair salary for educational workers. We received the news that the strike ended with a guaranteed salary increase of 5% for educators and all state workers with great joy and satisfaction. The strike lasted 9 days, closing the public schools in all 55 counties in West Virginia, showing in practice that struggle and militancy can lead us to victory. Not even a Republican state government could stop these educators. The Federation of Teachers from Puerto Rico join in celebrating this great victory. We salute our union sisters and brothers from the trenches as we struggle in defense of public education, for the rights of educators, and for our children's future. Back in 2008, Puerto Rican teachers carried out a successful strike that stopped the privatization of our school system. Today, we are facing this attack on public education all over again. As we struggle to defend our schools, you serve as an inspiration to us for the battles we face against privatization. Your victory gives us the strength we need to yet again stop the imposition of charter schools in Puerto Rico. Please accept our embrace and full support in your struggles.
So this one's dated March 9th, 2018 from Mexico City. Compañeras y compañeros, greetings to the sisters and brothers of West Virginia. It is with great joy that we heard the news of your successful strike. Once again, you have demonstrated that when thousands of teachers unite in defense of our rights and education as a right, we can win. That's right, we said win. A simple word that after decades of attacks on workers around the world becomes more than a concept. It means life, it means struggle, and it is our only acceptable goal. What's more, you have won during the Trump era, which was touted as a period when we wouldn't be able to fight back against anti-worker attacks. And you, the brave and dignified educators of West Virginia, have shown that the only certainty is struggle, where victory lies in our own hands. In struggle, we can win. It is so easy for us to be defeated when we don't struggle, but that is not our way. We will not go down without a fight. Our traditions are built on solidarity, dignity, and holding our heads high. Our strength lies in our organization, in numbers, and in the strike weapon. As you can imagine, the mainstream media in Mexico did not even bother to broadcast a minute of TV news or to print the tiniest note in the international section of your strike. How can we expect anything less from the same forces who criminalize us and make our own struggles here in Mexico invisible? But thanks to the bridges of solidarity that have been built in other struggles, we learned of your movement and victory. Mexican teachers from both sides of the border feel your victory like it was our own. Here in Mexico, the National Coordinating Committee of Education Workers has been fighting for years against the so-called educational reforms that criminalize teachers and rob them of their rights. Your example gives us hope and gives strength to carry on our fight. Similarly, the National Coordinating Committee of University Unions, which is fighting every day for decent wages, feels empowered by the example you have given of how to fight. We stand strong in the belief that it is only the struggle of education workers that can defend our rights and win our battles, just as you did. And if we can start winning, we can keep winning. Your victory is a step that will help us continue our fight. It is a step that helps us build cross-border bridges of solidarity and struggle for our common goal, the defense of public education, for the rights of educators, and for the consolidation of unions and worker organizations. We send you a big embrace and all our respect for this, your first victory. And as we say here, el maestro luchando también está enseñando, which means when teachers join in struggle, they are also teaching.
Thanks. I'm going to read a couple more because the breadth of them is quite exciting. This is from striking university workers at King's College in London. Solidarity from King's College London branch to all the West Virginia teachers who have been on strike for better wages and social provisions. From London to West Virginia, together we strike against an education system that needs what we bear, but cannot bear what we need. That's a good one. Yeah. Very unbiased. The striking university workers of City University of London, UK, stand in solidarity with the teachers and service personnel of West Virginia. Your heroic struggle, wildcat courage, and certain victory are inspirational. Education workers are rising up in Oklahoma, the UK, Finland, France, and Kenya. Let's make this a global victory for education and for the people, not profit, everywhere. Yeah. And I just wanted to remind people that the event tonight is being live streamed. Right now, we are being live streamed across the country in San Francisco, Chicago, Burlington, Amherst, Syracuse, Pittsburgh, Atlanta, Rochester, Boston, and Portland, Maine. Just to be clear, that's not like 12 individuals. Those are 12 watching parties where people are gathered in rooms, probably a little smaller than this, But I know that a lot of those folks are educators themselves and are rank and filers looking for strategies to move forward. So this is a great event that isn't just, the 300 plus of us in this room today, but is actually reaching out, and people will view it and review it and share it. And use the Facebook. We'll use Facebook, as we'll hear you all did for your struggle to spread the message. So before we start our chat, I just want to say, getting you all up here, which is a great honor to have you come visit, wasn't cheap. And so we're going to pass some buckets through the audience, because we don't expect the folks who came here to pay their way to teach us a lesson. So please dig in, and any money that we raise above and beyond the, I think, $1,500 to $2,000 it cost to get folks up here will go to the strike fund. And there is overhanging debt from the strike, costs incurred during the strike, that people are still, I think, to the tune of about $3,000. So we'd love to have people give what they can tonight. I know some of you all are tenured or, have seniority. So please dig deep if you can. And if you can't, we're glad you're here too. So with that being said, we're going to shift now to some conversation with the strikers. I'm going to ask a series of questions. We probably have about an hour for that. And I'll probably sprinkle in some more solidarity greetings where they fit, because there are a bunch of them. So just get comfortable, and we're going to hear from the three folks who have joined us, who I have not introduced, which I will do now. So we have with us tonight, from left to right, we have Katie Endicott, a teacher in Mingo County, one of the first school districts to strike. Not the first, I hear, but one of the first to go out. And Mingo County, as people know, is one of the hotbeds of labor struggle from the early 20th century, responsible by many accounts for some of the labor legislation that we all live under today. She's a high school teacher of 10 years. Next to her is Emily Comer, also a teacher, a Spanish teacher, and co-creator of the Facebook page West Virginia Public Employees United, which helped to organize the rank and file. And right next to me, right here, is Jay O'Neill, another teacher, this one, bravest of them all, a middle school teacher, who did a lot to bring together rank and file organizing efforts, also through the Facebook page. So can we get a quick hand for all of them? And now we're going to sit.
This healthcare issue, because it's affecting everyone, and some of the changes they proposed you may have heard about were like changing it to total family income. So even though my wife is not a public sector employee, because she's on my insurance, they're going to now factor in her income with mine, stack them together, and that's going to be the tier we're in. So like my premium was going to double. I think Katie's was too. It's just crazy stuff like that. And so people got pretty heated over that, and that kind of kicked it off and let us really use that as an organizing thing.
Yeah, and we started using the Facebook group to kind of advertise events that were happening anyway and mobilize people to show up. So, for example, there were town halls that were happening in the fall, like November of last year, right? Like there was an education town hall at Jay's school, actually. We advertised that heavily or promoted it heavily in the Facebook group and encouraged people to come. Both of the teachers unions took that event and they promoted it on their own pages. And so we had, my county leaders were there from AFT and they asked great questions. But we had, just a ton of people come because they saw it in the Facebook group. Around the same time, we started, I think maybe it was like a month later, December, I created a Facebook event to get people to come to a PEIA select committee meeting at the Capitol. And this is just a tiny conference room with legislators where they talk about changes to PEIA. And I made that just from my own personal Facebook page and where I shared it just as myself. It wasn't affiliated with either union. Both teachers unions shared it. And then we ended up getting the presidents of this, the state presidents of both teachers unions in that meeting. and we crowded the room. It was a packed room. I ended up confronting the chair of the committee later on camera and then sharing that video in the group. It went viral, like West Virginia viral. And people got really excited about that. And the momentum started to build from there pretty early on. People, at that point, it felt different than it had every year because, our insurance keeps getting more expensive every year, but nothing ever gets done about it. And so it felt like finally this year was going to be different.
So with the Facebook page, we really can't overstate the importance of that because that really allowed us to get networked. And we were able to, at that point, get the pulse of all 55 counties really quickly. So where I teach in the southern part of the state, I already knew the pulse of the southern counties, but because of this page, I'm now able to see what counties in the eastern part of the state, what counties in the northern part of the state, what they're thinking. And so that, as well as the unity with our unions that started happening, the fact that we were bridging those divides, that sort of created the perfect storm for what happened in the South. And so she was joking about Mingo County. Mingo County was one of the first counties to hold an emergency meeting. So all of these things are going viral, these meetings and comments that legislators are saying that we felt like were provoking us and, West Virginia viral. And so at this point, people are saying, what's going on? We didn't know. And so for a lot of people, people were just, we didn't know some of these changes that were happening. And in years past, those changes happened, and they happened so quickly that we weren't aware. But with the Facebook page, now everybody is aware. Because if you can't go to the meeting, somebody's live streaming that meeting, and you're still able to watch, and you're still able to see what's going on. So in Mingo County, we had one of the first meetings, and in that meeting, we discussed a blue flu day, which is a one-day sick out. Everybody takes one day. We shut the system down. At that meeting, it was informational, so everyone was asking questions. We had our legislators there. We had union reps there. It was a joint meeting with all of our unions, so all three unions in our state, our service personnel and both teacher unions were there with us. And this meeting lasted 2.5 hours, and to put it into context, there's probably 90% of all employees in my county were at this emergency meeting. My county is very small, and we literally packed the room out. It was standing room only, and everybody was absolutely fired up. We wanted to know what was going on. We wanted to hear it from our legislators. We wanted to hear it from our union reps. We had teachers that got up and spoke at this meeting. And the last teacher strike was in 1990. So there was a teacher in the room who stood up and she said, listen, y'all can talk about PEIA all you want. You can talk about a blue flu day all you want, but public education in West Virginia has been under assault for a very long time. And when you take that blue flu day, I'll be there with you. I'll stand there with you, but make no mistake about it, we will have to strike. Yeah. And so at that point, it had always been referred to as the S word. That was one of the first times. That was one of the first times that we actually just said it out loud. And I remember a colleague looked at me and she said, oh gosh, we're really going to strike, aren't we? And I said, I think we are. And so we talked about this blue flu day. And at one point I stood up and I said, guys, the eyes of this state are on us. People are calling, and they're saying, what's Mingo doing? What are y'all doing? Are you going out? Are you going to strike? Okay, we'll take the blue flu day. But that's just one step. If we can unite, I know that Logan County will go out with us. I know that Wyoming County is going to go out with us. I know that McDowell County is going to go out with us. We will have other counties that will go out with us. Someone just has to be courageous enough to take the first step. Now, at the same time, we were willing to take the first step. Wyoming County, which was like 7 minutes away from where I live, they were saying the same thing. We know Mingo will go out. We know, I mean, we do have a very rich labor history. We are home to May 1, West Virginia. The Battle of Blair Mountain. So, this is our history. This is in our blood. And so we felt like, everybody knows somebody that's been on strike. My mom was on strike in 1990. I was just, 4 years old at that point, and I was on the picket line with her. And the whole time through this process, she's saying, Katie, quit with the blue flu. Just strike. You all just have to strike. And so we had all these people that had been on the line in 1990, and they were letting us know, because there were people there, and, our union reps, they were wonderful, but at the same time, they were letting us know the legal consequences, because they have to. And they were saying you could be fired, you could lose seniority, all these things, you're going to lose 1 day's worth of pay for sure. And a teacher stood up and said, I was on the line in 1990. I didn't get fired. You didn't get fired. You didn't get fired. You didn't get fired. You didn't get fired. Nobody in here is getting fired. And so at that point, we knew, okay, Blue Flu Day, let's do it. Mm-hmm. And we also knew at some point we were probably striking.
And I'll just say, to kind of, in other parts of the state while that's happening, so our goal with our Facebook group was to have 1,000 members by Christmas, and we were really thrilled that we got that many. That was Christmas. Now the group has like almost 25,000. This is how quickly things shot up. But while they're talking about that, rumors are running rampant, right? Like the southern counties, oh my goodness, they're saying the S word. And when it got out that they were going to do that, then some of the rest of us, because our counties just were not there, said we're going to do walk-ins that Friday.
Yes.
So, like an informational picket before school, a show of solidarity. We were even selective and called the media ahead of time for some schools just to really try to maximize the coverage. And that day when they walked out, like it was...
Do you guys know what a walk-in is? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was, tell them.
Okay, well, it's like an informational picket outside of school before school starts, like as parents are bringing the kids and the school buses are dropping off the kids. So we would hold signs, just all the teachers outside of the school having an informational picket, just to kind of let parents know, hey, we're asking this of our legislators. We are engaged in this fight. And, it was kind of to let the parents know that we had been engaged in this fight and we were hoping that we could win it before we ever had to go out on strike. Yeah. And I think we gained a lot of support from the community that way.
It was also a really good way to build solidarity with other workers at the school. A lot of people who I just kind of assumed maybe wouldn't be that active and want to be involved with this got really into the walk-ins, and then we saw, that escalate after that. But I was skeptical before doing it, honestly, but they were a really good strategy to build solidarity within the school. That
idea came from our union leadership, but it spread throughout the group really quickly, and so it, pictures of the walk-ins kind of took off throughout the group, and then it spread to other areas throughout the state, and soon enough you had people in all 55 counties doing the walk-ins, or at least it looked like it across the Facebook group. And another thing that happened around that time was coordinating these days of like wearing the same colors, and I thought that was really cool because you had everybody on Fridays would wear red, and you would have you would get home from school on Friday and I would look at my phone and I would see pages and pages, my entire phone would just be, an entire school in Boone County, every employee posing for a picture wearing the color red. And I remember there was one county in Logan where every school employee was wearing a red UMWA shirt. And I just thought that was so cool and so inspiring. And it really felt like everybody's in this together. We are wearing red across the entire state. And then we started coordinating Mondays are the color blue, and that stands for state employees. And so that showed that we were in it for state employees too, not just teachers. Yeah.
And Emily, can you tell the story about, you were telling me about some screenshots that were going around?
Oh, yeah. This is another thing that really took off in the group. When we were another thing we did to build to try, so that we hoped that it wouldn't lead to a strike was that we were really asking people to email and call their legislators, and people started posting the screenshots that they got, the responses they got from their legislators, and they were nasty. A lot of them were just awful, or they were like, very misleading, or they said, well, PEIA is already fully funded, or I'm not sure what you mean by fully funded, those sorts of things. And so people posted those to the group, and we saw that just around the entire state, just how, where our legislators' priorities were, and how they kept saying we don't have enough money in the budget for revenue, just our state just doesn't have the money right now. And we know better than that. We know that our state is wealthy in natural resources, and
Add one thing? Yeah. So on February 2nd, when those 4 counties walked out, we were live streaming that and putting it in the Facebook page, and everybody on their planning and during their lunch, they were watching this live stream. And I remember one person from another county looked at me and he said, "So you're really going to the Capitol with 4 counties?" And I said, "Yeah, we're really going to the Capitol with 4 counties." And he said, "Do you understand they're going to laugh you out of the Capitol?" And I said, "No, they're not, because we're not going to leave the Capitol." And so we started with 4, and we live streamed, and it was amazing because I had messages from people that I didn't even know in that group that were saying, "I'm in this county, and I'm so sorry we didn't walk with you, but we won't miss that opportunity again." And so not too long after that, 7 counties then decided they were going to do a one-day. Now, in the meantime, we see the walk-ins, and we start doing walk-ins, and every day there was something. Every day we were doing a walk-in, or our parents would come, and they would do a walk-in on our behalf. It was amazing to see every day from February 2nd on. There was something going on. It did not stop, because that was one of the things we asked ourselves. So we're going to take this one-day blue flu, then what? Well, we didn't stop.
Right.
So every day there was something going on. So it went from 4, then it went to 7, and then, like he said, we weren't making any progress, and these legislators are saying things and doing things to provoke. One example is on February 2nd, a senator looks at my husband. My husband was trying to talk to him and tell him his concerns, and he looks at him and points his finger in his face in front of a bunch of other educators and says, "You don't like what's going on in Charleston? Why don't you get your ass on a ballot?" One of his colleagues, because my husband was a little stunned, and he can be a hothead, so I was just praying. I was like, "Please, please, please, please don't get arrested. We want this nonviolent." But one of his colleagues, before he could even respond, said, "Why don't you get your ass in my classroom?" So it was moments like this that was firing up the entire state, because they were seeing all of this. And in West Virginia, we are family. So you don't mess with one county or one person without messing with everybody. We take great pride in our counties. We take great pride in our hometown. So when you have 4 counties that go out, and these other counties are seeing everybody pick on them and saying derogatory things and being mean and not listening, all the other counties start stepping up, and they start saying, "You're not going to mess with those 4, because you're going to have to deal with all 55. And so that's what we said when we came the first day of 55. We said, not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 55 are at your door. We packed that place out. And it took off so quickly, from 4 to 7 to 55.
Yeah, thank you. I was going to ask you about that transition from 7 to. That's a big jump. That's a 48 county jump. And so, what did you anticipate that kind of exponential growth, that kind of breakthrough. And I think people up here had different experiences of that process. And so I would love it if you could go into that a little bit. And just to say, I think for a lot of us on the sidelines watching, you know, we haven't seen this kind of like big, illegal, direct action. You know, it's been a few years since we saw that kind of like public sector radicalism, I would call it. And I think a lot of people, maybe I was sucked in a little bit too by some of the news coverage of the southern states, thinking like, wow, I didn't expect this coming from here. And I think you changed a lot of people's minds on that. So if you could talk about that transition and how it took off and that breakthrough and what that was like for people, that would be great.
I was going to say one thing was that, you know, the day that the 7 counties walked out, the Senate was in session, and I know the Senate gallery was packed with teachers, and then outside of the Senate chamber, you know, the Capitol was packed with all the teachers that had come up from those 7 counties, and they were chanting, and, you know, people were watching that. The counties that didn't go out, teachers were watching that, you know, during lunch, anytime they could, on the live stream. And then at a certain point, our Senate President, Mitch Carmichael, just out of nowhere, said the Senate's going to recess and we're going to come back at 6:00. And he was trying to like wait out the teachers, or, you know, he thought they would go home. Everybody would pack up and go home. And I remember he like banged, there was video footage of it, and then people, you know, screenshotted it, but he like banged the gavel and he had the smirk, and the smirk like went West Virginia viral. But I think now it's actually gone like really viral. Like everybody knows the smirk. But so that made everyone across the state furious. And I think at that point, everyone was just done anyway. Like everyone was just finished with all of this, and we had gone through the proper channels, right? We had been going to town halls for months. We had been going to PEI hearings for months. We had been writing, we had been calling, we had been hearing the same thing. And it was around that time that our state leadership called for a vote. And, you know, we never heard what the exact numbers were, but we heard super majorities. So, I mean, that's, you know,
Best kind of majority.
I think that's just how it happened. We just we watched that the, you know, the 4 counties and the 7 counties had the courage to do it. We watched that we weren't getting anywhere through the proper channels, and then we took a vote.
Yeah. And did it go the way you expected?
By that point, yes, it did. One thing I want to say that we feel like is kind of a victory, but I don't know if people outside of the state realize it, is just the fact that all 3 unions were working together was really, really big.
Yeah.
And
Say more about that. Explain how the right to work element winds up. Like, who's in your buildings? Are they all one union?
No. Yeah, it's a mix. It's a mix of everything and non-union teachers, and so it was. I think a lot of that started locally in counties having their meetings and I mean, the reality is if you're going to do a walkout, a one-day blue flu or whatever, like you got to have everybody on board, you know, and so that kind of forced the unions at the local level to work together, and then eventually, you know, kind of at the state level. Funny enough, I actually had somebody, I'm in WVA, but I had somebody from AFT talking to me, and he said, this was earlier on back in January, and he said, look, like I can tell things are heating up. There's a lot of discussion. All this stuff is happening. We've got to get the state unions together working on the same page, because he said, look, those southern counties, he said, one of them's going to go out. I don't know when. And he said, that's going to be the earthquake that sets off the tsunami. And he called it. It was exactly right.
Great. Either you want to add anything?
I was just going to say that in our first meeting that we had, we talked about the reality. We talked about the proper channels. We knew what the proper channels were. We had that mapped out. We also knew we probably were going to have to go be on the proper channels. But we talked about what will unity look like? What are we expecting? And, coming from Mate 1, Battle of Blair Mountain, the mine wars, we knew that somebody had to step out. And we were willing to do that. And we also believed in our state. We believed in the other counties. And we believed that they were going to step out with us. So we didn't know if we would have 55, but we knew we would have more than enough. And so when we did have 55, it was absolutely unreal. I remember the first time I heard the 55 United, 55 Strong chant, I broke down and cried. Because it was, see, I'm going to cry right now talking about it. It was unity like I had never experienced. And we were standing up near the front of the Senate chanting, and I remember people were started holding my hands. And it was people from, Mason County and Putnam County, people I had never met before, but these were my brothers and sisters. These were my fellow educators, and we were standing together, we were standing united, and every time people would ask, they would say, "Are we going back tomorrow?" And we would smile and we would say, "No, we're not going back tomorrow." And so we knew we were 55 strong, and no one wanted to be the county that made it 54. Nobody wanted to be that county. So there was no real unease. We knew once we got to 55, we were staying 55 strong.
So, do any of you do we want to add anything else? I was going to ask some kind of more general, bigger questions. Anything else you want to add about the organizing leading up to it? The experience of being in the Capitol, how you were interacting with your school groups and your county.
I want to add that our service personnel were awesome, and that we could not have done this without our bus drivers and our cooks, our teachers' aides, and yeah, that was one of the things that we heard every day during the strike. Before, when we knew that, the teachers, as teachers, we knew that we were not going back in, but school hadn't been canceled yet. We hadn't heard word from our superintendent about whether or not school had been canceled yet. We would then officially get word from the WVSSPA county president, the buses will not run tomorrow. Which means the buses don't run. There's not school tomorrow. And that was just so, we would all cheer. And I think at one point we gave him a standing ovation. And there was just so much solidarity between teachers and service personnel. And the media didn't cover that. And so this was really seen in the media as a teacher's strike, but it was a school employees strike. Yeah.
She gave a shout out to service, and absolutely, we had the same experience in Mingo County. There was one person who was not really negative, but they just said, "So what happens if in my school we don't have a majority? What if my school wants to show up to work?" And I remember a bus driver looking and saying, "Honey,
Bless your
you
heart.
just don't understand, do you? The buses aren't running. There is no school tomorrow." And so not only were service personnel amazing, but our superintendents rocked. They were amazing. They came to the Capitol, all of them. Mitch Carmichael wanted he is the villain, I guess. And so he called a meeting, and there was a lot, in the Capitol that day, everyone was saying, "Oh gosh, what's he going to do? Is he going to try to force somebody to file an injunction?" But when they had that meeting, it was live streamed. Our superintendents literally locked arms, and they said, "No, they're not going back." And so to have that support from our superintendents, I remember the first time that we saw our superintendent after that, my county literally gave him a 5-minute standing ovation. And so when we're talking unity, yes, it was teachers, it was service personnel, it was everybody in the education system. everybody in the education system was together. And even those that may not have really wanted to be, peer pressure goes a long way. So I don't know how many supers were, supportive, but once one starts speaking up, 2, 3, 4, 5, that makes it a lot harder, for somebody to break that unity. And so what we displayed, I don't even know that it's really sunk in all the way yet, but the unity all the way around was phenomenal.
Thank you. We're living in the age of digital media, so I'm getting live responses from the live stream. And one thing that was pointed out that I think is important is that some of the solidarity greetings that I read earlier, especially from the United Kingdom, were actually collected by women participating in the International Women's Day strike, which was yesterday, which is great. Thank you to the organizers. I don't know what day it is. I have a 7-year-old. You all understand. But it just brought to mind the question of, teaching is traditionally a woman's job, right? And I think, going to some of the social support that the strikers supplied during the strike, if you could all talk about the leadership of women in the strike and in the schools, that would be great. That would be a great addition.
Well, we immediately thought about how our kids were going to eat. Half of our students live in poverty in West Virginia. And so before we went out, when it was looking like, we were going to strike, we started around the state. We were contacting churches and food banks and starting to organize hot meals for kids and backpack, programs for kids to fill up their backpacks. So we made sure that our kids had food throughout the duration of the strike, and our communities were excellent on that. And so, one of the things as teachers, we have a unique window into the entire economy of our communities, and so we every day see the effects of the opioid crisis and just poverty at every level. I have students experiencing trauma, and all of that plays out in my classroom. So it's not just about my paycheck, right? It's not just about my health care, but, the worse the economy gets, the harder just my job gets, the more stressful it is. It's an emotional burden on me and all of the other teachers in my building who are mostly women. And, so I think we recognize that the same legislators that are making it harder for us to get a raise and, making it harder for us to get decent health care are the ones putting our children in poverty.
That's right.
Vote them out. That's what we chanted. And keep an eye out in May and November because I think it's going to happen.
Yeah.
But the role of women, it's funny that you said that because I've always viewed myself as a teacher. And I remember when, through this process, there's been so many interviews with different people. And I remember one of the interviews someone sent me, and they had put at the bottom of the screen, activist. And I laughed. I was sitting with, one of my best friends. I laughed and I said, activist. And she was dead serious. She looked at me and she said, you are. And I said, I am. You're right. Yes. I am not just a teacher. I'm an activist. And so a lot of women have really led this movement. They truly have. I mean, one of our union presidents is Christine Cagle. She is a woman, and one of the most inspiring things, she would come out, and it was almost like a rock star, depending on the day. Now, some days she was not, but, it's fair to say. But, no, she, we loved our union, and we really could not have accomplished what we did without them. Now, we did I guess, maybe overstep them along the way sometimes. They told us to go back to work, and we said, nope, we're not going to. But I remember seeing Christine Campbell come out, and a bunch of women were wanting to take selfies with her. And one of them said, man, she's life goals. Look at that. It said, one of our union presidents is a female. And they're like, I'm so inspired by that. And so you have more women now stepping up and wanting to run for these offices and becoming involved. And you know, it's unreal to see it. And so even without a title, though, and I think that's what we saw. That's what I saw. People that did not have a title, that were maybe not involved in the union, people that were complacent, maybe paying their dues, but not really taking an active role. When this happened, they stood up, they took an active role. And so we learned that you don't have to have a title. You don't have to have a position. You just have to have courage and a backbone to stand up for yourself, your state, and your kids. And that's what we did.
Right. I don't know if you want to try. Jump in there.
I'm good.
Yeah, you're good. I'll just say, too, for all the people that took that stand and used that courage, you all have inspired a generation of people, young women and men. And I think particularly because the labor movement is often seen as a boys' club. You know, I'm the first female steward in my workplace ever. I'm one of 3 women. Don't get excited. But it means a lot. It means a lot to women like myself who are looking at the labor movement and trying to, you know, make our space for ourselves, that you all took that stand and cleared the road for us. So thank you very much. And I did want to pivot and, you know, touch on something that Emily was bringing up about the social crisis affecting not just West Virginia, but a lot of parts of the country right now. Poverty, opioid crisis, and a general atmosphere of despair. And kind of how did the strike live in that space, and how did that affect people's consciousness and thinking? And you all had mentioned probably 4 or 5 times in different conversations today about West Virginia went for Sanders and then went for Trump, and how that all fits together in your mind, and how that all played out, how people are pinning their hopes on different things at this time. If you could answer all that stuff, that'd be great.
Go ahead.
All right. Well, I feel like, you know, the national media, since the start of the national media is like, you know, they've had to talk about West Virginia in a way that is not another Trump think piece, right? And they're like, what? The same place that voted for Trump is now on strike. What is this? And, you know, I keep saying it comes from the same place. It comes from a place of economic desperation. That's why people voted for Trump in West Virginia, and that's why people are on strike now, or, well, went on strike. And I think it's the same, you know, in that election, all 55 counties in the Democratic primary voted for Bernie Sanders and then turned around in the general election and voted for Donald Trump. And I think people think about it a little too hard. People are just poor and they're out of work and coal is gone and they don't know what to do and they're looking for anything different, right? It's not really ideological. It's not, I don't know. And I don't want to downplay, you know, racism or nationalism, but I think there's, you know, I think it's mostly like economic desperation. I don't know. And I think that Katie, you know, being from Mingo County, said, you want to go ahead and talk about?
Yeah, you know, in Mingo County, I first started teaching 10 years ago, and it was a different county 10 years ago. 10 years ago, coal was booming, and a lot of our students were not really in poverty. Our students, we had poverty, do not get me wrong, we certainly face that, but a lot of our students came from coal mining families. And so Dad was making over $100,000 a year as a coal miner, which is amazing. And it's a great salary. My husband and I both have master's degrees, and we're lucky to make 80 between both of us. To put that into, so these kids, you know, they were coming from families that they were financial. Some of them were financially well off. We get portrayed sometimes in the national media as a place that doesn't want to work, and that is absolutely not true. It's just when I first started working there in Mingo County, coal was booming. I remember one time I asked my students, you know, the question. I started in middle school. Jay stayed in middle school. I started in middle school, and then I moved to high school. But 3 years. That was all it took. All it took. But I had a careers class, and I would always ask, you know, what do you want to be when you grow up? And the men in my class, the young boys, they would say a coal miner. And at the time, I said, that's good. You know, what other job are you going to get in Mingo County and make $100,000 a year? You're not. So, you know, their dad was a coal miner, their grandfather was a coal miner. So these kids were well off financially. And then some of those same families now, 10 years later, I'm seeing brothers and sisters, and we're having to hand out backpacks to those families so they can eat over the weekend. Because Dad no longer has a job. In my county, if you aren't a coal miner, we don't have a whole lot else for you to do unless you have a college education and you can be a teacher. Those are the options in my county.
Yeah, the best paying jobs in your county are teaching, right?
Yeah, those are the best paying jobs that we have. So Dad is now laid off. They've took the trailer, the truck, all of it, and now we're having to come up with $700 just to pay electric, or they're going to cut their electric off. And we're doing that in my school. I can't tell you how many power bills that teachers have rallied together and chipped in their last $20 or their $40, or we've passed the plate around just like you all did earlier to take care of us. And so we are taking care of these families, but it was not like that 10 years ago. So now we're in this economic desperation, and it's not only affecting our kids, but because it's affected so many families and so many families are leaving, my school lost 11 positions approximately in 1 year because enrollment is going down. And we always would get a certain amount at the end of the year. Well, we don't get that amount anymore because coal severance is down. So coal has affected everything where I'm at. And there was never a plan, really. When coal started disappearing, there was never a plan as far as, well, what do we do now? Now that these men are out of work and now that they can't make $100,000 a year, now what do we do? Unemployment doesn't cut it. No. It doesn't cut it. So it does come from a place of desperation. People are looking for anything to give them hope, anything that will inspire some kind of change. And I think that's why you saw the strike happen, was because, you know, we are in that place of desperation in West Virginia. Something did have to change. But in the strike, instead of looking to a politician to change things, we looked at each other.
Follow that up.
No, I can't either. So, can you speak on a little bit, like your role as a teacher? You all just said so much about your connection to your students, and that's a theme that comes up in teacher struggles around the country. You know, like the Seattle strike, talking about unequal access to education for non-white kids, and the Chicago Teachers Union strike in 2012. Their slogan was, our work conditions are the students' learning conditions, trying to tie the fate of those two groups together. So could you talk a little bit about your students' involvement and your students' attitude toward the strike?
I'm going to jump in because if I follow Katie, it's not going to be good. So I think overall we had tremendous support. We even, on I guess a week ago Friday, had a student-led rally and march around the Capitol outside that some high school students put together, and they gave speeches and then led us literally around the Capitol in a march, and it was just amazing to see their support. And I think when we all got back to school on Wednesday this week, just the fist bumps and high fives we were getting from students and just the signs of solidarity and support from our students were really amazing.
Yep, absolutely. I had kids tell me on Wednesday they were proud of me. They saw me on the news. Miss Comer, I saw you on the news. I'm so proud of you. And I had kids join me on the picket line, that kind of stuff.
I was just going, like, when I left on the 21st, a student came to me, and he gave me a hug, and he said, Endicott, because that's what they call me. They don't call me Mrs. Endicott. They just call me Endicott. He said, Endicott, and he put his finger, like he was very authoritative. He said, Endicott, don't you dare come back in this building until you get everything you deserve. When I walked back in, the day after we won, he came back and he gave me a massive hug. He picked me up off the ground. And he said, I told you, and you know what? You didn't come back until you got everything you deserved. And I said, thank you so much. 3 comments, and I tweeted about it. The 3 comments I heard were, number 1, Endicott, you're a rock star. 2, I missed you. And 3, I'm proud of you. And it was amazing to see. I teach at a comprehensive high school, so we have a teacher cadet program for people who want to be teachers when they go to college. And so I had this kid that came up to me, and she's a senior, and she gave me a hug, and she was almost in tears. She said, I know that you didn't just fight for you. You fought for me. And she said, I know that I can now stay in this state, and I can follow your all's example. You're my hero. And so it was amazing to see students rally together. A lot of my students joined the picket line. One of them spoke at the rally. And I asked my students this. I said, what have you learned through this process? And this was their response. Number 1, we got to be careful who we vote for. And number 2, they said, we can't just vote. We have to be active. So a lot of people, a lot of critics said, but what about the kids? They were out of school for 2 weeks. What did they learn? They didn't learn anything. Sounds to me like they learned a whole lot, and more than we could have ever taught them in a classroom.
Do you want to just drop the mic? Oh, did they have any cute chants that they did? They do anything cute?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So when my students came, they thought the best chant in the world, and they were so excited because my kids didn't just come to the march. They came at 8 a.m. I live 2 hours away from the Capitol. Okay, so they woke up extra early, and they were there with signs so that they could chant with us. And their signs said what their favorite chant was: move, Mitch, get out the way, get out the way. And so when I walked back in the classroom, guess what I walked back into? Move, Mitch, get out the way, get out the way, get out the way. And so they thought that was awesome. And one of my kids, we were laughing about it. I was like, do you even know that song? Like, how old are you? And one of them said, but Endicott, Mitch got out of the way.
Okay. I think this is going to be our last kind of topic that we'll spend 45 minutes talking about. What do you all feel like you've accomplished in the course of this? And what direction do you feel like you all are headed in now? Not just in your schools, but in the unions. What's the effect been on the unions? Just give us your balance sheet and your vision
This has been great for our unions. Just obviously participation has soared. People are now, organic leaders have come up in the unions. And, I just became building rep at my school like a month ago because it was too much co-building rep because it was too much for, my school's really big and it was too much for just one building rep. So, and that kind of stuff is happening. We had schools without building reps. And so now building reps are stepping up, and not just building rep, but all across the board, you have people stepping up to fill leadership roles, but also our membership has soared. I know in Kanawha County, my county, the last count was 100 new members. Around the state, I think 1,000 new members, and that's just in AFT, my union. So I don't even know what it looks like in WVEA or WVSSPA, but people are joining the union. People are excited to be part of the union, and they're coming to meetings and packing the room at the meetings. And I think that will keep up. I mean, I think that we're going to stay engaged in a fight. We still have this PEIA fight ahead of us, and we still have a revenue fight ahead of us. That's not going away, and where people are very much committed to that. So there's another. We managed to kill a bunch of bad bills. We didn't just get a 5% raise. And then the PEIA task force. We also killed this thing called paycheck protection, which would have made it. When you sign up to get your union dues taken out of your paycheck, you would have had to re-sign up for that every year. It would have, killed the unions. We killed charter schools this year. Yeah.
Oh, that little thing.
Yeah. No big deal. Whatever. We killed seniority. Yeah, there were attacks on seniority in legislation this year that we killed. We also this was one of the legislature's priorities at the beginning of the session. They wanted to eliminate the business inventory tax, and this was basically like a coal industry priority. And that it was $140 million in the budget that goes to fund public schools. And they just wanted to get rid of it. They said, what did they, I don't even remember how they framed it, but they said.
Well, our governor came out in his State of the State address and it called it his just cut taxes and win proposal. But, I mean, I think we learned that when you're taking up all their time with a teacher strike and flooding the Capitol, it's really hard for them to pass other bad things.
And not.
Life lessons.
That's true, but not just that. Our message from the very beginning has been, we need revenue to fund our healthcare and our raises, and where are your priorities? Your priorities are with your corporate donors. How can you, we want corporate welfare reversed, right? We want we want a raise on gas severance. And how can you say, we just can't do that right now, and then cut this tax for the coal industry, and then tell us that you just don't have money in the budget for our health care, or for a raise. So I think they just had to save face. They couldn't, it would not have looked very good if they had cut that tax.
Life goals, visions. Where can we expect to see you all go next in West Virginia? And right to work state, Janice is coming down the pike. What's your forecast?
I'll just start with that. Just briefly. Promise I'll be brief this time.
We have time for that, yeah.
No, we love y'all too. We are so excited to be here. I mean, we are truly. We were out in the hallway and we were like, is this real life? Like, this is surreal. I mean, we're just, seriously, thank you all so much. For me, I know the conversation, when I showed up at the Capitol on Tuesday with my colleagues, we had because we're so far away from the Capitol, we had shifts, we had rotations. And so we already had our rotation for the rest of the week. And when I showed up on Tuesday, we were already making plans for the future. Like we already knew we were going to have to come back on Wednesday. My day was to come back on Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. And so when we showed up and we found out that we won, we were like, oh, we won. And we won so much quicker than what we thought. Mm-hmm. And one of the things we had said was that a house divided cannot stand. Mm-hmm. We never divided. We never divided. And so I feel an overwhelming sense of responsibility now to share our story, mm-hmm. and to let other people know the power in unions, the power in organization, the power in unity. And so that feeling that I got whenever we won, and everyone was crying, we were singing Country Roads. Okay, that's our song. We sang that song 8 million times, all right? We hear it in our sleep. I hear it in my sleep. So that's our song. But I tell you what, this is what happened, and this is where it shifted. We sang that song, we held hands, we cried, we hugged each other, we gave high fives, but then we started chanting, West Virginia first, Oklahoma next.
That's right. That's right.
This fight was not just about West Virginia. This was for the entire nation. This was for the world. Mm-hmm. And I believe that this was a lesson that everybody can benefit from. And we believe that we are one spark that is now being fanned into a flame. And we want to see it spread all across.
That's right. That's right.
I don't know how to follow that again. But I do think for all of us, we know this is just, I'm going to take it back to the West Virginia level for a second. We know this is just the one battle in an ongoing series of battles. We're not naive enough to think that everything's going to be fine now and great. And so we're already talking about upcoming organizing, what happens next, how do we make sure teachers actually get out and vote, like all those type of things to really make a difference. And one thing I want to say that you haven't asked, but I'm going to say it anyway. Yes. Seriously, I'll speak for me. Like, if I can do this, anybody can, because I am not like an expert organizer by any means. Like, I'm going to say I hope it's okay, but I feel like we really didn't know what we were doing. You know, we just did what we thought made sense and would work. Yeah. So really, like, if we can do it, anybody can. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, yeah. Mm-hmm.
We are going to start to transition, but do you have any things I haven't asked you, because you stayed so on topic, that you would like to add, that you would like to contribute or leave the audience with before we go to Oklahoma?
I just want to thank you guys. You guys are awesome. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I know you've been waiting to sit back down. So while you do that, I'm going to read out a couple more solidarity greetings that have come in. And we're going to, for people who haven't been following the constant updates on the event page on Facebook, we are going to have an audio contribution. Someone will be calling in. We don't have a video feed for them, but they will be calling in. Larry Cagle. I butchered his name about 10 times today. Larry Cagle from the Oklahoma Teachers United group will be calling in. So while we get ready for that, Just going to read a couple more things. I feel like I'm serenading you now. From Halifax, Nova Scotia, deepest solidarity greetings from Halifax, Canada. We make Halifax work. The strike by teachers in West Virginia has been particularly inspiring to Nova Scotia workers, and particularly to teachers and other education sector workers in our province. We bring greetings of deepest and most heartfelt solidarity from the front lines of the struggle in Nova Scotia to your gathering in New York City tonight and on to the teachers in West Virginia themselves. Your struggle is our struggle, and the way you have conducted your struggles in West Virginia has been a tremendous inspiration here in Halifax and throughout our province. We stand with you, shoulder to shoulder, both in spirit and in the streets. Solidarity. And from Vermont, hotbed of radicalism, from the Vermont Federation of Nurses and Health Professionals, the power we possess through our unions is the only force that can make politicians and bosses recognize our worth. Thank you, AFT and WVEA teachers, for providing an electrifying example of what can happen when we stand together and unleash the creativity, passion, and caring of our coworkers. Those qualities that make us outstanding at our jobs are what forced the legislature in West Virginia to back down. You are truly an inspiration. So, do we have Larry on the line?
Larry, you can speak into the mic, yeah?
Yes, I can. Hello, West Virginia.
Hello.
I'm Larry Cagle. I'm the founder of Oklahoma Teachers United. It is a protest group that was started about a year ago, and I'm really excited to listen in to what you guys are doing. But can you hear me?
Yeah.
I love you, West Virginia.
We love you.
We love you too.
You have no idea. It has been a long and scary walk for us to get to this place where we're nearing our first walkout date. It was really a scary road. When we originally started, it was just a group of teachers nervously talking about just how bad our schools were, and we were a little embarrassed to tell each other, you know, that our schools were so bad because we didn't want people to think poorly of us, or poorly of our students, or poorly of the institution we represented. But slowly but surely, this group of teachers began to identify and recognize that we had a shared story. And after months and months of dwelling on this, and school began in August, just a pit in my stomach started to boil, and by November, I felt like I just had to take action. And I met with another teacher at a school equal to my own. I teach at a classic upper middle class school where you would expect high-performing students and not a lot of controversy. And I reached out to a peer of mine who I had a lot of respect for, who taught at also another high-performing school, two high-performing schools of the state. And sitting in a Starbucks coffee shop, we plotted our plan of mayhem to get to get parents to sit up and pay attention. I just felt like that if we were going to have any impact at all, we had to first get the parents to hear us, and then we could potentially get those parents to reach out to legislators. And so our story begins with an attempt to create sick outs, groups of teachers calling in sick all at the same time, creating a shortage of substitutes such that students would have to sit in cafeterias and auditoriums. And this worked beautifully. We got media coverage for it. We told them in advance what we were doing, and the media covered it. And then of course, anonymously. And then, of course, we would do it, and then we would invite the media out and have them interview students, all anonymously. After a month of that, and this began in January, after a month or so of this, we knew we needed to move to Plan B, and that Plan B meant that we would drop a hint to the students, and the hint went like this. A teacher would go in the class and say, hey, I hear there's a rumor that students are going to get up and walk out all at the same time. Yeah, only a teacher knows that joke. And of course the students were like, wow, who's doing that? I so would do that. So then we let that percolate for a couple of days, and then we came back and we dropped another hint. Well, gosh, since you haven't figured out who it is, I wonder who should it be? And the students would slowly but carefully figure out who they wanted to do the strike. When that person emerged, and there were about 30 schools that were networked with us at this time who were doing the same thing. When the students came forward that we thought would be good leaders, we wanted to make sure that they were protected. We didn't want them to get in trouble, and we didn't want students to jackass, on the walkout and steal away from the message that we were about to send. So we called the parents. It was a really risky move, and we were all sweating about, what do you say, and how are they going to react to this? So we had to tell our story. Our story was simple. At my school, it was very straightforward. At my school, one of the highest performing high schools in the state, in my 5 years, we had lost 70% of our teachers in turnover. 70%. It's an astonishing number. And that we, as teachers, could no longer sit idle, and that I encouraged the parents to ask their students, is this true? Is this something you're experiencing? And what does that mean in the classroom? It also meant doing something very, very unusual for us in our profession. It meant talking candidly about underperforming teachers who were on emergency certifications, who did not have a college degree, and had not yet passed the state certifications for that particular class. Our state is riddled with hundreds of them. So we asked the parents to back us, and the parents did. And my school was the first one to walk out. We got tons of media, and of course it didn't take long for other schools to go, and the phone calls from fellow teachers across the state started pouring in. At about 1,500, maybe 2,000 teachers, we decided we had enough, that we had enough to begin to talk about actually walking out. We had attempted to reach out to the unions, but unlike your story, our story is a little more frustrating. We did not have union support. We did not have administrator support. But what we did have, we had complete parental support. We had 75% of parents who had taken a survey say that they would support teachers if they walked out. So we announced to the media that we would be meeting. Teachers from Oklahoma, teachers from across Oklahoma would meet in Oklahoma City and plan a walkout. It would be the first time many of us would ever be identified by name and by face, some of the things that we had been doing in protest in preparation for this. And it was extremely, extremely stressful. This was literally just last Friday. Not yesterday, but a week before. We went into that meeting, and it became clear that we were unified. There was nothing else to do. We would have to begin to trend. We would have to personally sacrifice. It might take us a few weeks, but we would have to begin the process. We stepped out of that meeting, and before we left, there was a young man from Stillwater, Oklahoma, classic millennial, and I'm not picking on millennials, I'm just saying, classic millennial. He had heard about our meeting, and he was sitting at home because he couldn't make the meeting, and he wondered to himself, I wonder if we just said strike, what would people say? How would they react? So he created a Facebook group, and he called it Oklahoma Teachers Strike. The time is now. He would go back within 24 hours because he was under such tremendous pressure and was required to take strike out and put walkout in. But he said strike initially. And he got clever. Leave it to millennials to be smarter than the rest of us when it comes to social media. he got a list of hundreds and hundreds of teachers, and he started manually entering them in as members of his group. And then he sent them a message which said, register all of your fellow teachers on this site. And while we were in, this is like a day before, 2 days before our Friday meeting last week. And while we're in the meeting, one of the teachers says, I just got joined to this Facebook group, and and there are 10,000 people following it. Now, at this point, we were a meeting of a couple hundred people, and worse yet, we were probably followed on Facebook by maybe 1,500 people. And so the idea that there was another group of teachers out there somewhere in the state that had 10,000 people on it just blew us away. We just could not get our head around it. But we knew that was momentum. We knew if teachers were signing on board, it must mean something. So we all left and we all went to bed. And last Saturday night, a week ago from today, we all woke up and looked at Facebook, and holy shit, 40,000 teachers had signed on to one Facebook, and we were now being followed by 8,000 people. We couldn't believe it. We knew we had a mandate, and so we took an enormous risk, and we made phone calls. It was about 20 of us made phone calls to every school board member we could get our hands on and any superintendent we could get our hands on. And we made a bold, bold threat. And that was, on Wednesday of the following week, the same group of teachers are going to meet again, and we're going to pick a walkout date. Either you get in front of us, or you will be behind us. Wow. And to our shock, they actually responded. They had an emergency meeting this past Sunday, and they agreed to pick a protest plan as well as a potential walkout date, which we were relieved to hear. I mean, we were like, wow, that's exactly what we wanted. Oh my God, it actually happened. However, we were a little shocked because on Monday when they rolled it out, the protest plan was a three-tiered plan. It began with step one, where teachers were going to be asked. This, by the way, was being rolled out by superintendents and our state and our local unions, well, at least most of our local unions. And it said this, plan one would be that teachers would be asked to only work the contract. The phrase was exact, work the contract. That meant that teachers would only be required to do the work that the contract stated. And essentially they were hinting at teachers would no longer be expected to stay late or come in early to assist students when needed, which is in the face of most teachers, and I hope that you, I know that you would agree, that's a ridiculous thing to ask of me. I mean, in the face of a student, I would never say no. Never, ever say no. It just is not something I could do. Can I strike and not think about their faces? Yes, that I can do. But I cannot tell a student no to their face. It was a ridiculous request. Step two was that teachers would be allowed to go and protest one day only. And we would only be allowed to protest at 10 schools at a time. A ridiculous request. Absolutely ridiculous to think that legislators would be swayed because we were only working our contract and we would be coming down 10 schools at a time to say, please, Mr. Legislator, do you not understand? We have been working at near poverty wages for a decade. Last but not least was the third step to the plan, which is that teachers, if we didn't persuade them with step 1 and 2, we would be allowed to strike on April 23rd, 4 weeks before the end of the school year. So obviously, you know that took the wind out of our sails, and we were just devastated. So we doubled down. We called the union, the state union, and we said, I'm sorry, but there's no way we're going to get behind that. We're now being followed by 50,000 people. We've had 250,000 responses from our state saying, you must find the courage to strike. We also had about 10,000 West Virginia teachers texting us saying, you're amazing. So the union got angry and hung up the phone on us, and we just gritted our teeth and went into another plan of attack. About 130 teachers went into 130 schools on Tuesday and Wednesday, and we met one-on-one. We went room to room, hall to hall, and asked teachers to sign, would you agree to walk out with us if we went on a date that was April 2nd or earlier? We got a very, very, very high sign-on rate. And then, of course, the most persuasive part of our plan of action was the last visit was the site union member. We went by the site union member's room, handed them the list of names, and said, hey, union buddy, are you with me? To which you can imagine they said, hell no. We knew that he would pick up or she would pick up the phone and call the union and go, holy shit, they're going to go without us. And they did. On Wednesday at 2 o'clock, the union buckled and decided to go with April 2nd. And that's where we are today. Unfortunately for us, we're still seeing, unfortunately for us, we are probably 2/3 of the teachers in the state. If you're following us at all on Oklahoma Teachers United, you can see that we're about 2/3 of the teachers are in complete support, but we are being trolled on a regular basis by hardcore union members who are mad at us. And I listened to you talk, and it really kind of broke my heart. It brought a tear to my eye. The fact that West Virginia figured out how to get united. Now, I don't know how we're going to bridge this gap. The fact that Oklahoma Teachers United attacked the union that now has to represent us. We do have some fences that need to be mended, and I hope in the days ahead we find that, because we will not win divided. We have to find our way back together under this unified plan. So I really do welcome your advice, your feedback, your questions. This will be really valuable to me. I have got a conference tomorrow. Our committee of teachers across the state are coming in to do our version of emergency planning, because we want to get behind the union, but yet we are not ready to surrender our trust in the union, and because we feel it's not been earned, and we want to make sure that when we go out, we come back with results. So I really do welcome your questions and your feedback.
Larry, you told me something earlier today that I think the audience would like to hear about one of the latest updates.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're not going to get any, OTU isn't, Oklahoma Teachers United is not going to get any credit for this. But I announced in media a month ago when we were protesting that OTU was negotiating through backdoor conversations with the State Employees Union, the OPEA. The OPEA was willing to talk to us. The Democratic Party approached me and said, OPEA, here's the teachers are talking about going on a strike, and they would like to join you on the strike line, but they don't trust your state union. They're afraid if they go out with you, the state union will get their deal and then go back in. And I tried to provide some assurances that I didn't believe that was the right thing to do, and that I can't imagine teachers would be selfish enough to leave their fellow public service employees out there. Quite frankly, we knew that they had actually gone longer in the state. Teachers in Oklahoma have gone 11 years without a raise. Public service employees have gone 14 years without a raise. They're in a much difficult position. And from their position, if Oklahoma teachers go on strike, we alone, that is, we will make it very difficult for them to maneuver to get a raise for themselves. So I asked that they follow me for a while and follow OTU for a while until we could confirm that we could control, or at least we could help lead, not control, I want to take that word back, that we could help lead and inspire the teachers and OEA, our state union, to to do the right thing by all parties. After long discussions, OPEA, the state employees union, not teachers, announced today that they would be joining us on the strike line. This will probably be one of the biggest strikes in U.S. history, probably with, if not one of the biggest, one of the top 5 strikes. It'll be 150,000 people, and we will shut the state down. It will be very difficult. And what's really important, and the reason I wanted to do that, was the overriding problem for us in Oklahoma it was exactly like your problem. It had to do with how much we were going to tax oil and gas. And in Oklahoma, over 8 years ago, we had decided, our legislators had decided to reduce our oil tax from 7 to 3.5. And this gutted our economy and left legislators no option but to keep cutting education back. We're funded so low that the last time education funding was at this low was 2005. It's been well over 13 years since this level of funding has been allowed. So we're looking at severe class staffing issues, severe problems with large classrooms. So when you look at that and you see the size of it, the only real answer is that the legislators would have to go back to taxing at 7%. And this is a really big conundrum politically. Republicans don't want to do it. Democrats don't hold anywhere near enough enough seats in the House to make that happen. But if 150,000 state and teacher employees walk out all at the same time, there is only one way to get us back. One way. There is no other solution. There's nothing else you can tax this much. You can't tax cigarettes. You can't tax gas at the pump. There's just no other way. You will have to change the gas. And now we have a fight between the average American, the average Oklahoman against legislators. And we will be predominant. Those of us striking, the vast majority of us will be Republicans, fighting Republican legislators to say enough is enough. You have to do the right thing. So this will be a very unique protest in that it's not Bernie versus Trump. It's Trump versus Trump. And we have to decide now, who do we want to be? How do we want the state to look? It's really an exciting time. But it's also a very scary time. I have no idea what's going to become of us. And like I said, we have got to get on the same page, and we've got to get on the same page quickly.
Larry, can you you're going to basically close us out for the panel, and then we'll have to end the live stream. But I want you to talk a little bit about the entire proposal that you guys have come up with in terms of all the different funding that you're asking for across the board.
So you're going to put me at a slight disadvantage. We've never wanted to be the union. We've never wanted to be the negotiator. We've understood the outlines of the union, but we've stayed very careful to not insert ourselves in the negotiating process because that's what the union's going to need to discuss. And if it looks like you can split us, OTU does not want to get in the middle. We don't want to take phone calls from legislators saying, "Would you agree to this?" Yeah. We will back the union. The only thing that I think teachers in Oklahoma are going to hold firm on is you will have to give us a baseline raise of $5,000, and you will have to give us another $5,000 increase over a period of 3 years. There is a ton more that I know that for West Virginia they must be going, what the fuck? Yes, you have to understand that Texas pays $15,000 more a year, and Arkansas pays $12,000 more a year. While I love the Ozarks, I don't know what it is about Razorbacks that makes them so special. If we're going to stop the drain of teachers out of Oklahoma, we're going to have to compete with salaries in the surrounding states. That's just a fact. I mean, it's basic economics. When we get young teachers coming out of college, they come and spend 1 or 2 years, and then they bop off to another state. And of course they would. Why wouldn't they? That's just too much money for a young person to do without, especially when you talk about the starting salary in Oklahoma is down at $32,000, which is $2,000 above the poverty line. So no, we simply can't do it. So the demands from OTU are very simple. We do want the union to have the flexibility without our intervention in the negotiations. And so I don't want to get into it too much more than to say I think the teachers would be shocked if there was a significant drop in that expectation. I would like to, if I'm allowed, and I don't know how much time I have, I would like to read a letter to you from teachers from OTU to West Virginia. Do I have? I think it'll take me 3 minutes.
Yes. Let's close out with that. Yeah. Let's close out with that.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty good closeout. It's called A Love Letter to West Virginia. Aww. Dear West Virginia, I am writing to tell you I love you. In the last few weeks, you've shown me what it feels like to be loved again. Your courage, your passion, your kindness, and the way you just seemed to know how I was hurting. I am beginning to believe I deserve respect. I deserve to be heard. I am a person of value. So I want to run to you. I'm sorry, but I can't leave just now. I should have said something earlier. You need to know that I'm married. Clearly, I know you will understand. It's not been a good marriage. What person flirts with a state when they're already married to another state? Please don't tell Oklahoma. I don't know if they would understand what the past few weeks with you has meant to me. I feel like the love that I give to my work and my community could matter again. You helped me believe in that. But Oklahoma is my first love, and they have promised me they are going to work on this marriage. I'm going to try one more time to make it work. I know it's a lot to ask of you, but I need time to see if this marriage can be what they promised it would be. I've heard that you've been talking to Arizona and Kentucky. I'm sorry. I understand your life must move on. You are something special, and you've shown that to the people of your state. I can totally see why Arizona and Kentucky would be so excited to hear from you. Know that I am grateful for you. Think of me from time to time. I love this state, and I love this marriage, and I'm going to fight to make this state what we have all dreamed it could be. Love, Oklahoma Teachers United.
For people who are watching at home on the live stream, I just want to remind you that you can donate directly to the strike fund through the GoFundMe. As I mentioned earlier, there are some outstanding costs associated with the strike, so the fund is still looking for money. And I would remind the people here tonight that you will have another opportunity to give on your way out. We passed the buckets around, and we haven't met our financial costs, so if you can dip again, and on your way out, drop in the buckets. There'll be people at the doors. We're not done quite yet, but keep that in mind. Don't put your wallet somewhere you can't reach it. I'm going to read one final solidarity greeting from Toronto, from the Canadian Union of Public Employees Local 3903. This is from their bargaining team. They're currently on strike over their contract. So this is their well-wishing. On behalf of the striking education workers of CUPE 3903, I extend this message of solidarity with you in your struggle. What striking teachers in West Virginia have been able to achieve recently have given us all a sense of re-energized hope. Regardless of the differences of our particular issues, these struggles are about dignity and respect for workers. Teachers are some of the lowest paid in the country. What does that say about your commitment to quality education, to student futures? These frontline workers give their time and energy to careers in a field that offers little security. This work deserves recognition and the decency of livable wages. The lesson to be taken away here is that when workers stand up and challenge the status quo, as when we saw with your decision to keep striking until these demands were passed as law, not only can workers lead and direct themselves in struggle, but they can win. In solidarity, Lena Nasser, spokesperson CPUE 3903.